Good morning. We are live. Share the broadcast with someone. Let people know that we are on. You are welcome this morning. Happy Thanksgiving. My prayer for you is that you enjoyed Thanksgiving because I did. I enjoyed myself. We had some friends come over, some family come over. It was just phenomenal. Again, I'm grateful for how far the Lord has brought me. And yesterday was extra special. Let me say this. I'm going to receive a call again because I try to address the issue and it didn't get addressed. And so I will have to receive a call. Just a heads up in session. But that's the only way. There's no other way for me to do it. So I have to be here. I'm hoping that I'll be done before they call. But if I'm not, I'm gonna go off for like a minute and come back. I'll mute myself. Anyway, yesterday was extra special. The Lord did a huge thing for my family this year. A huge thing for my family this year. And that was January 23rd, 2023. Okay. And then yesterday, my husband brought to my attention that obviously it's the 23rd. I didn't realize that. And so 11/23/23, there was obviously that was a huge blessing. And so yesterday was kind of the completion of that blessing, the completion, the needed Thanksgiving God, I would say expected. So that came about all yesterday. So I am grateful, super duper grateful that everything came full circle yesterday. It was such a blessing. So I'm big on numbers. It's not just me, numbers, but that's how God speaks to me a lot of times. And so it was such a great honor to celebrate yesterday how far the Lord has brought my family. How far the Lord has brought my family. And like someone said yesterday, there is still 12/23. So that means December 23rd, 2023, because there were promises that God made to me in 2023. And so it's happening on like the 23rd days, every 23rd, there's something big, something massive. And so I'm in expectation for December 23rd. That is the last 23rd of the year. So I cannot wait to see what God will do by the 23rd of December. So I hope you enjoyed your family yesterday. And the more grateful you are, like I said, the more happier you get, the more satisfied, the more joy and peaceful you become, because it never becomes about what you don't have. It's more so what is there? What do you have? When Moses was complaining in the wilderness and when God spoke to him, he kept saying, oh, I'm too young. I'm too this. I don't have that. I'm a stutterer. And God had to remind him that you have things in your hands. Everything you need is usually in your hands. A lot of people think it's coming outside of us. Everything you need is already in your hands. So we may be looking for jobs, but your gift is in your hand. So God always gives us things in our hands. So when you're wondering, I don't know what to do, life is changing, what's in your hand is what will bring you back the most reward, okay? When you're wondering if the grass is greener, what's in your hand is your current spouse. You like that? What's in your hand is your current spouse. That's who you can see right now. And so we know that is what you've got, and that's what you can work with. So be encouraged this morning. So let me jump right in, because when the call comes, it may interrupt. So let me jump right in. There are three separate ways that I want to talk about changes, like adapting to changes in our marriage. A lot of us don't know how to adapt. We call it coping mechanisms, but I changed the title to adapting to changes because many people don't even understand what coping mechanisms may be. And when they see it, they may think like is a mental aspect of it. Like, the coping mechanisms is usually the way you handle situations in life, how you cope, right? So if you experience a loss, somebody may ask you, how are you coping with the loss? How are you coping with the joblessness? How are you coping? And so anytime you experience a challenge, a thing in your life, it becomes a way to, you need a way to cope. You need a way to cope. And so coping mechanisms are needed and necessary in your life. But I want to specifically focus on 3 areas of your life that can demand adaptability, all right? Career changes. When you get married, you may experience career changes. When you get married, you may experience family changes and personal changes. Those 3 areas is what I want to focus on. I'm praying I don't miss this call. But career changes, family changes, and personal changes. When you get married, okay, you may have gotten married. Maybe you were doing a particular kind of job, and then now you discovered you want to get into another career. There's nothing wrong with starting another career when you're married, right? There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think what happens is a lot of times the career move can infringe upon your spouse. So for example, maybe when you were together dating, you were both working during the day, all right? But then one person completed school or decided to change their jobs and you got a better opportunity, maybe they pay better, but it's a night shift, right? So maybe you're working at night and your spouse is working during the day. The circadian rhythm, which is your body's rhythm of sleeping, waking, and all of that, the sleep-wake cycle and all those things, the rhythm, the way it's set up, we're supposed to sleep at night. You might tell yourself, but how does the body know that it's night? Because you get busy during the day. So whether you recognize or not, the day is busy, right? During the day, obviously there's light outside and there's movements, children are going to school. So naturally, the body knows you function in the day. When you switch, and that's how you live most of your life. So when in your 30s or 40s, you decide, I'm going to work night shift, for example, you literally shifted your circadian rhythm. And so it becomes a challenge to yourself personally and a challenge to your family. So if you work night shift, you're not spending time with the kids. You're not getting up and, doing breakfast or spending time with the family because you're sleeping when they're awake. And when you're awake, they're sleeping, which is the night. So at night, you are at work and maybe you want to call your spouse and they're like, listen, bro, I'm sleeping. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that whole career change, right? The schedule changes can really impact your family. You don't have you really want to hang out with the family, but you can't because of those changes. Also, it may even be a promotion, okay? It's not a bad thing. It's clearly a better income, but the lifestyle will have to change to adapt. And there are difficulties. So I'm going to mention all these things and I'll come back and talk about some of the challenges of adapting. Because obviously, even if you're trying to have a child, you're trying to begin a family, the schedule messes with your body, your conception, the schedule messes with it. Because again, you guys are not flowing together. There's no balance, there's no consistency. So even that can be impacted, you trying to bear, okay? As couples, you need to adapt by talking about budgeting. So in the case of a career, adapting, like, how are we going to budget our schedules? What is going to be the household responsibilities, right? Because if you're working night, then somebody is picking up the tab during the day and having to do the runarounds, having to do the cooking, the cleaning, and all of that. So when there are changes in career, it doesn't just impact schedules. That's it. No, it impacts your budget, right? Either good or bad. Career changes can also be negative. You can you can lose your job. You can lose your job. You can, so many things can happen in that will shift even the household responsibilities, like I said, because you may not have as much time to do what you used to do or to be part of the family together. Family changes. So family changes can be the birth of a child. I'll come here and talk about adapting to the birth of a child specifically, but just to kind of quickly address that, the birth of a child, the death of a loved one, a lot of times, we lose family members, extended family members, or we lose parents. It brings an added bearing on the family, and how the family adapts to those changes matter. Because maybe just that the funeral cost and everything becomes your burden. Maybe you're the only child, maybe you're the oldest, and so I know with Caribbeans and Africans, and there's a huge burden on children when it comes to burying a parent. There's a huge burden. And even uncles and aunts and like just extended families, there is still a burden. There is still a burden on the children for showing up. Major life changes, moving to another, relocations is can be very challenging. When you relocate, you may not have people around you, family members to help you, support you, whatever. You may not have people around you to be there for you. So that's very important to also bear that in mind, that family changes can be due to death, birth, moves. So it requires you to adapt. Again, what is it? Adapting. I'll come back and talk about how you adapt. All right. Because you will have to either seek professional help eventually if it becomes a challenge to kind of like settle in. The birth of a child can pose postpartum depression. It's a reality. Once a child is born, maybe you're a new mom, you're a new dad, you don't know how to handle the emotions, all of the changes that come with it. Maybe one parent, obviously as the mom, you take some time in your home, the father has to work, and you're like, why are you not taking time to be with the baby? But maybe they can't take time to be with the baby. So those are realistic changes that people go through. The third one is, you can tell I'm going to be quick on this one, right? The third one is personal changes. Personal changes, see, we're individuals, people change. So if you feel like you and your spouse are one, it's good and bad at the same time. Because there may come to a time where your spouse just needs space on their own. They are growing, they're experiencing. Personal changes can be, maybe both of you met, you were not going to church. Now, one spouse is like, I'm going to chase after the Lord. They become more serious in the things of God. That can pose a challenge. Are you here with me? I want you to respond. Can you connect, or can you resonate with this? That the fact that your Christian walk, you're more serious, can become a challenge to your spouse. Because maybe your spouse is used to drinking, hanging out, partying, and you're like, no. I'm going to church. So the going to church can become a challenge, because your spouse can look at you and say, all you want to do is go to church. So now the good thing almost becomes like a curse to your spouse. So that's something to bear in mind. Personal changes, you're growing, you're becoming more spiritual, you're becoming more serious, reading your word, fasting. You're fasting, and your husband, your wife is like, you're fasting. What do you mean? It's probably usually the men that have issues with the fast. The Bible talks about talking to your spouse, agreeing to fast and whatever, sex during fast, look, it's when you need to consecrate yourself, there needs to be some kind of agreement that, look, I need 3 days away. I need 4 days away. And listen, God will find a way to put you away if he really needs you to be away. I went through seasons in my life that God just needed me to himself. And you know what? Things happened to make sure that I was just alone with God. So I think that as individuals, we just have to be mindful that these are all realistic changes that people experience. Yes, So the being unequally yoked, thank you for bringing that up. Being unequally yoked, this is where it becomes challenging because you're chasing after the things of God. Like right now, me personally, that's all I want to do is either church or it's like church or I'm home, church or I'm home. So it's like anything else cannot interfere, or gone are the days when I have to go to a party or my friend is getting married, I have to travel a million miles away, but it's like, no, I can't because I have a church program. So those changes is hard for your spouse to adapt. Maybe there's a family event they want you to go to the family wedding, you're like, I'm not going to the wedding. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, no, I have an event. And so these are realistic changes. Sometimes maybe you're aging, maybe your body is just not responding the way it used to respond. Maybe you're just feeling more tired. If you're in my case, you're more tired, your knees are giving in. Listen, just tired in general. And things are changing. Your body is letting you know that another year has come. We celebrate the birthdays and forget that another year means literally another year and another weakness in your body. You will have to fight it. Like you have to exercise. Some of us, we're still growing in that area. But those personal changes are realistic. Personal growth. Sometimes imagine people who marry their spouse very young. Maybe this is your high school sweetheart. High school sweethearts, a lot of them, they do very well for a long time. And then when they hit 20 years, when they hit 20, 30 years, they give up and they can't be married anymore because your high school sweetheart, you met them when they don't know who they were. They were just trying to figure out their life. They didn't even want to find their identity. They were just kind of trying to figure out life. And then you get to a point where it's like, now you're in your mid-20s. You definitely outgrew you outgrow your high school ages, your high school years, excuse me. Your high school years, you definitely outgrow them. After you outgrow it, your spouse doesn't want to change. Your spouse is still the same. Your spouse is used to the same things. And you're like, this is not me. I want something different. I want something new. Do you understand? I want something different. I want something new. So I believe that a lot of high school sweethearts don't make it because you get to that place in your life, you're new, you've grown, you've outgrown the relationship. I met a couple that were married for 30 years, very young couple, because they got together when they were very young. So they've been together for 30 years. They got married right after high school. And the woman was like, I am ready for something new. She was like, I tried. Like, he was stuck in his own old ways, the video games, he just didn't want to come up a little higher. And she outdid herself. And she just got tired of the same old, like he was just the same high school guy. So many couples outgrow each other. So when you become more spiritual, more serious with God, you will outgrow your spouse. There's no way things will continue to flow the way they flow. Because me personally, I can share my experience that even though I was always in church, I'm a PK, a preacher's kid, always in church, always. I never thought it was important to like necessarily marry someone that was like church. And so when you're getting married, you're not thinking about those things because you're like, the person is good, they're nice, they're not drinking, they're not. So you're like, you don't think about it any other way. My personal journey, as time went by, I got closer and closer to God until God had me where he wants me to be. So nothing could interfere with that. Do you understand what I'm saying? So naturally, there will be some changes where you need to adapt. You need to adapt to, where do you place the family versus, here is the better change, right? Is to carry the me and my house, right? The Bible says, me and my house will serve the Lord. When you do it together, it didn't start together, but by the grace of God, we are ebbing together and we are flowing together. Do you understand? When you're alone on that journey, it's difficult. This is where I talk about frustrated wives, because frustrated, a lot of the relationships, you see a lot of the women growing closer to God quicker. You know, even though men were in the presence of God before women, women tend to come back into the presence of God and turn into God more than men. And that is part of the challenge and part of the attacks on marriage, is that the men functions in the presence of God, but men find it difficult to be in the presence of God for whatever reason. It's mostly women in church, right? But when men are with their spouse, it changes the whole dynamic. So a personal change could be my faith journey is changing. When your faith journey changes, naturally, you're going to butt heads. You know, there was a stage, which I'm still in that stage. If you play what we call hip life or worldly music, my ear begins to hurt. And I'm in that stage. So I grew up partying. Anybody who knows me that I grew up partying. I was known on campus for being a dancer. I was known, I mean, in my community, everybody knew if you wanted your party to be lit, Ruth has to be there. I was the life of the party. And so as I got closer to God, something as simple as a baby shower, I wouldn't go to baby showers. I wouldn't go, weddings were like, like these are great celebration milestones. It doesn't mean that I'm not saying you shouldn't do weddings. You can. But you have to be in a stage, like I will show up, but I won't be able to do or stay the way I used to stay. So after a little bit, I get uncomfortable. There goes the call. A moment. Thank you so much, guys. I needed to handle this. Okay. I hope you guys can hear me. Are you able to hear me now? Let me see. You have to be in a stage, like I will show. Thank you so much. Okay. Guys. Good. You can hear me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And so what was I talking about? Changes. We are ever evolving people, and our needs change, our interests change. My interest changed. I was partying up storm. I was doing listen, I was living it up. All right. I've partied enough for 20 years. If you heard me talk about my partying, I've said this, that I partied enough for my children, that my children don't have to party. I've partied enough for all of us. We're good. So I enjoyed myself. I don't regret it. I don't regret me going out and really enjoying my youth. Okay. A lot of times people don't experience their youth. Many people become very serious very soon in life. They become very serious very early in life, and they live really, really good life, goody. And so when they get older, it's like they don't know how to, they want to go back and catch their youth. Like you see 50-year-old women wearing very tight clothes. It's like they didn't get their youth. Maybe their youth, they had to like work hard and take care of children or whatever. And so they want to retract. So you might have a spouse who all of a sudden wants to start hanging out. In your 40s, where are you going? Sit down. All of a sudden, they want to start, I want to go out, I want to do this, I want to do, because they didn't experience their youth. You know, some of us, it's out of our system. I'm missing nothing. Like, if I want to throw a party, I'll throw it down in my house. Like, there's no longer a need to go hang out. I have no interest whatsoever to go to any party, so I can create a party at home. I can throw it down. So that's not a problem. And when I do, I don't want to hear any worldly music. I don't. And you might think, I love Celine Dion, and maybe I will still have a bit of that, right? But, different stages, I'm not saying don't listen to any love music or whatever you want to listen to. I'm just saying that for me, that's the stage I got into, that it was hard for me. Anything that's like, it just irks my ear. That in itself can also become a challenge, because your spouse may be like, no, I want to listen to something else. Like, I want some rap music. I want some. So you got to be, again, the unequally yoked. This is where you see that the yoke is not equal. This is where, when you're trying to move on to greater levels, greater dimensions, and your spouse is like, no, leave me right here. That's where you begin to see the changes. All right. But so how do you address and adapt to all of these things? Adaptation, like I said, when it comes to career change, you may have to adjust your budget. Maybe you guys were working, you had great jobs, wife got pregnant, wife cannot work. Seriously, wife cannot work. And the thing about pregnancy, I always tell couples, oh, I want to have children. I want to have children. I'm like, having children is not the problem. Having children is not the problem. But you have to understand that having children comes with a lot of challenges. So mentally, you can never be fully prepared. But at the very least, know that if I get pregnant, it's possible that I may not be able to work. Or I will work, but I might have to leave work early. So if your finances do not allow for that, think about it twice. And there are people that get pregnant, and within weeks, they have to be off, like bed rest. You have to stop. You can't do nothing. Bed rest immediately. Okay? So these are realistic things nobody talks about or tells you about. Career changes. Maybe you're having fertility issues and and they're telling you, don't work a certain shift, don't do certain things, don't pick up heavy things, don't. So all those things are there. All right. So how do you adjust? Talk about it. Live within your means. If you can live on one budget, live on one budget. One income, live on one income. Maybe your spouse is asking you, let's go buy a bigger house. Let's go do, you have to sit there and say, okay, can I afford a bigger house? Bigger houses are nice, very nice. But can I afford a bigger house? Can I, I know there was a stage in our lives, I was like, what? Anything above 300, we're not doing it. Anything above 300, no way. That stage is gone. You come to another stage where you both have to agree to enter that new income bracket. Do you understand? You enter that new level, that new dimension. You have to agree on it. Changes. Maybe one of you is not used to living less than. Maybe they're used to buying their name brands, and now you have to readapt because now there's only one income instead of two. All right. My husband and I came to a point, at one point, both of us had no jobs. We were not working at all. Do you understand how challenging that can be? But I say kudos to this man because we navigated that season. God graced us so well that you couldn't tell whether there's work or there's no work. Listen, when you agree, that's why I talk about agreement so much, because when two agree, can two walk together except they be agreed? That agreement, if we didn't tell you we were not working, you wouldn't believe that we're not working. There came a point, both of us, no income, zero, nuts. But we lived that miracle life, and God remains our provider. And so, we never look at work as our source. No, God has always been our source, because there were times we depended 100% on God. Where the next meal will come from, who will pay the bills, 100% on God. We depended on God. And so, because he had a covenant with us that we would never lack. And so there was never any lack whatsoever. But that can be challenging to a couple who has not grown or learned to depend on God, or you can argue and bicker because we're with each other every day. What do you do? I see your face every day. You see, that can become a point of contention. So it's so important for us to walk in agreement. The family changes I talked about. If there's a funeral, maybe they're calling for money, they're calling for this, they're calling for that. A child is born. So you might have to adjust the way you sleep. If you sleep 10 hours, now you're sleeping 5, maybe just 3. Every 3 hours, you're waking up. All those changes, you need to learn to adapt. When people ask me, what is the most important thing to ask your spouse to be? Ask them about their coping mechanisms. Better yet, watch how they adapt. Watch how they deal with stress. Watch how they deal with changes. Watch how they deal, like maybe they have a flat tire. How do they react to the flat tire? Is it the end of the world when there's a flat tire? Or how do they react overall? That is crucial. That is important. All right. So I want you to be in that mindset. I want you to be in that thought process that all the changes that happen in our marriage, we need to learn, we need to sit and talk about it. We need to adapt and give each other some room for growth. Give each other room, because your growth may be fast. Their growth may be a little slow. They may be growing in the Lord, but it may be a little slow. You have to be able to be patient with them along the way and help them and support them on their journey. All right. But communicate openly about everything. Be honest. This is how I feel. This is where I am. This is what I want to do. Be patient and understanding. Not everybody learns fast, and not everybody knows how to cope with difficulty. Maybe you experience a miscarriage. Your spouse is handling it better than you. Maybe you are handling it better than your spouse. Be patient with them, because there are people that just don't know how to handle tough situations. They just don't know. Their coping mechanism has not been built. They have not learned to rely on things. So they may kind of lash out and take it on you. But be patient with them. Pray for them and help them to adjust. All right. Be willing to compromise. Maybe your spouse was the one doing certain things, cooking, but it comes to a point. I know in my most recent months, I wasn't able to cook or clean or do anything. I had a health situation, and I couldn't do much of anything. And I was pretty stuck. Like I was just kind of there and I couldn't do much. And so in that situation, he had to pick up the tab a little bit more. I didn't go to the kitchen for probably, I would say, a good 3 months. Yeah, at the very minimum. If I went to the kitchen, I was going to wash my hands or whatever, or grab water, or I couldn't do anything. When I say I couldn't do anything for myself, I couldn't do anything for myself. And so when we talk about for better, for worse, in sickness, in health, these are some of the situations. If you never had to take care of a sick loved one, you wouldn't understand when we say in sickness or in health. I didn't think there would be a time I wouldn't be able to care for myself, where every little thing, when I had to move, my husband was the one. When I had to, I couldn't go to the kitchen and go warm food. He had to do it for me. And that lasted probably 3 months, or like I said, more than that. So you have to be able to adapt, and you have to be willing to be there. I couldn't drive. I couldn't do none of that. And so when you experience a situation like that, what do you do? What do you do? Do you just give up on your spouse and say, oh, they're not a burden? Does your spouse become a burden because now they're relying on you? You understand what I'm saying? So there's lots of changes that you need to learn to adapt. You need to learn to get to that place. Is the man the leader of the home? What do you mean? Like, are you asking generally, are men leaders of the home? Or are you asking me, like, based on what I'm saying, when the man is doing that, is the man leading the home? I want to better understand so I know how to answer back. So just see if you can clarify. Are men leaders of the home? Yes, the man is the leader overall of the home. And we talked about in the Bible how God called the man and created Adam first and then made him a helpmeet. So whatever the man is doing, the woman is helping, okay? Whatever the man is doing, the woman is helping. So the man is the leader, the head. So spiritually speaking, the man was in the presence of God first, right? God brought men in his presence so that once men is able, men can bring women along. Let's just say, put it that way. The 12 disciples, they were men. Jesus called 12 disciples, 12 young, very young men, because the 12 young men were going to, once they knew to preach the gospel and heal and bring this, and they will come and carry the women and the children along. So there is significance. So naturally, men are supposed to lead, protect, protect and provide, right? That's the natural manly role. When a man is not leading, there is a challenge. When a man is not leading, then the man is not in his full function. That is why when a man cannot financially provide, it becomes a challenge. So you may be in a home and you, the woman, you're working, your husband is home, he doesn't have a job, and you're like, but he's stressing me out, because the natural habitat of a man is provision, protection, and leadership. So the man is the leader, and the man leads his family, guides his family, and so there's a video that you can go back and look at. There was a week I talked about the purpose of men. So if you want to know, is the man the leader? Go to the video that says the purpose of men. And then there's another video that's about the absent father. The absent father is intense because it tells you the issues that men go through that challenges their manhood, okay? And how when they become fathers, they're able to show up or not show up because of what they experience. So that one is also a very powerful video. So I know that you didn't re-explain, but I will say go back and watch those videos to answer whether the man is a leader of the home or not, okay? So I'm done. If all else fails, you have to be willing to compromise. You have to be willing to work together, okay? But if all else fails, seek professional help. I'm a coach. I'm a marriage coach. I work with couples. Yes, I focus on frustrated wives because usually women are the ones that come to me. Because the men are like, I don't have a problem. What do you mean? I'm not going to talk to a counselor. Who's that? So men tend to complain a little bit about seeking help. But women, we're willing. We're out. We want to get the marriage to where it needs to go. So they usually get frustrated because they're ready for the change. Be patient, be loving, be caring. The Bible says that you don't divorce your husband because he's not born again. You don't divorce your wife because she's not born again. The unbelieving spouse basically can be saved through the believing spouse. So you have work to do to see them beyond you're my spouse and see them as a child of God that needs to be converted. All right. So with that, I leave you. Have an amazing, amazing day. Who knows? I may go back on the podcast and bring something out. But for y'all know I have courses coming up. I'll be selling a course coming up very soon, a coaching course. And it's going to be amazing, where I'm going to be working with a few couples, and I will be offering Zoom time with the couples on a weekly basis for about 6 weeks. So keep your eyes out. If you know any couples that need help, support, make sure that you reach out to them and let them know. All right. Have an amazing day. The Lord bless you. I will see you next week. Enjoy your weekend. All right. Bye-bye.